They thought they had her cornered, evidence destroyed, reputation ruined, and freedom slipping away. But while they celebrated, she was already 10 steps ahead. With a hidden ally, encrypted files, and a recorded confession to murder, she turned their perfect plan into a fatal mistake. In this game of deception, the final move isn't survival, it's checkmate, and they never saw it coming.
My phone vibrated on a Saturday while I was walking out of the mall. It was a message from my husband saying he was held up at the office. I would be having dinner by myself once again. I let out a sigh and walked to my car. Out of nowhere, a woman shouted my name. I thought I knew her from a work function years ago. She rushed over with a concerned expression and pushed an envelope into my hand. She whispered that I needed to see its contents and that I should question everything about my husband. Once inside my car, a feeling of terror washed over me as I opened it. Welcome to our channel. If you like our content, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Let us know your location. This story is fictional and created for drama and to share a moral. Any similarity to real people or situations is accidental, but the lesson is real. The sun in September created long shadows on the stone paths of the North Austin Mall. The Saturday afternoon was perfect. The temperature was a comfortable 78 degrees, with a breeze that carried the lovely smell of jasmine. I moved my shopping bag from one hand to the other, considering one final purchase. Graham's message meant I was eating alone again. This had become a normal part of my life. Approaching the parking lot, I heard a voice call out my full name, Lillian Grant. I spun around. A woman who looked to be in her mid-30s was coming my way. She was dressed in nice pants and a cream-colored shirt, giving her a professional but friendly appearance. Her dark hair was pulled back into a tidy ponytail. I had a feeling I had met her before, maybe at a conference. My name is Diana Cole. She introduced herself with a shy smile. We crossed paths in Houston during the AIA Texas event back in 2018. Your speech on green architecture was brilliant. The memory came back to me. I remembered the large ballroom and how nervous I was. I was the youngest architect on the panel. Wow, I replied, my smile becoming real. I remember you now. I was in the third row. I asked about the cost. Her smile grew bigger. You remember that? I asked her. It was a very good question. I switched my bag to my other hand. Are you living in Austin these days? She confirmed with a nod. I relocated here 3 months ago. I work as a forensic accountant, mostly for law firms. The city has a lot of work for me. What about you? Are you still creating those amazing homes? I just replied, I try my best. I laughed a little. My office is located downtown. We focus on luxury houses and some minor commercial buildings. Diana said, that is really impressive. She looked at her watch. This might be bold of me, but would you have a moment? There is a Starbucks right there. I would be happy to talk if you have time. I considered her offer. I did not know her well at all, but she felt sincere, and I had no reason to hurry home to a quiet house. Certainly, I answered. I would like that. We found an outdoor table with a green umbrella, and our cold coffee started to sweat. Diana began by asking general questions about my Austin life and my marriage. My responses were short. I came here in 2016 because of Graham's job. We had been married for 8 years and did not have any kids. We are working on it, I said, almost by habit. It was the answer I always gave. It implied we were hopeful, but hid my personal sadness. Diana looked at me with compassion. That must be difficult. It is what it is, I replied, taking a drink, wanting to talk about something else. How about yourself? Married? Do you have children? No to both, she replied. Her smile seemed forced. My job takes up most of my time. Plus, I have been dealing with some, let us just say, some trust problems. I got out of a bad relationship some time ago. I'm still processing it. I'm sorry about that. Do not be sorry, I learned a lot from it. She stopped talking and stirred the ice in her glass. Your husband's name is Graham, correct? What does he do for a living? He manages an investment fund named Hayes Capital Advisors. It is a small company that deals with real estate. He started it years ago after he left a large firm in Dallas. He sounds very ambitious. He is, I replied with a smile, though I felt a tightness in my gut. Graham excelled at everything. He was great at his work, great at getting people to trust him, and especially great at making me believe in him. Our conversation continued for about 20 more minutes. Diana listened very well. When we got up to go, she put her hand on my arm and took a simple envelope from her purse. Lillian, she started softly, I think you should have this. I struggled with doing this, but I would want someone to tell me if I were you. I stared at the envelope she was holding. What is in here? I asked in a low voice. Look at it when you are by yourself, she advised. Or not. It is up to you. She placed it in my palm. You will find my number inside. Get in touch if you need help. After saying that, she spun around and left. I sat in my car for a good 5 minutes, not moving, until I found the courage to open it. The envelope held 3 pictures on thin paper. They were blurry, like they were shot from far away and enlarged. The first picture was of Graham in a restaurant with an attractive woman with dark hair in her late 20s. She appeared smart and stylish. They were sharing a laugh, leaning in close. Her hand rested on the table, nearly on top of his. The next picture showed Graham's hand on the small of her back as he guided her into the Four Seasons Hotel. The final photo was a close shot with a date and time. September 7th, 2024, at 8:43 in the evening. That was exactly a week ago. It was the same night Graham claimed to be meeting a client. My hands began to shake. The pictures fell onto the seat next to me as I struggled to breathe. I grabbed them again, staring at his dark gray suit, the one I just picked up from the cleaners. I knew that watch. I gave it to him for our 5th anniversary. A business card slipped out. It read Deanna Cole, forensic accountant, and had a phone number. My head was spinning. I could not process what I was seeing. A part of me wanted to yell. Another part found the mistake almost funny. This had to be a simple mix-up. The woman was likely a client. It must have been a business meeting. But the expression on his face... My phone vibrated. It was a text from Graham. Running late, do not stay up for me. Love you. I just looked at the message. A few days earlier, those words would have made me feel loved. Now they seemed empty and automatic. I had to find out what was real. But if I asked him, he would just deny it. He would invent a flawless story. I needed evidence that he could not dismiss. My hands trembled as I turned the key in the ignition. The pictures were on the seat next to me, turned over. For 8 years, I had trusted him completely. For 8 years, I had taken him at his word. And now I was doubting everything. I could not sleep at all that night. Graham came in a little after midnight. I heard the garage door open, a sound that used to make me feel secure. I listened to him move around the house, placing his keys on the counter, taking his shoes off, and turning on the water in the bathroom. I pretended to be asleep when he got into bed. My eyes were closed and my breathing was steady, but my thoughts were going wild. I could smell something on him. It was perfume, a woman's perfume. It was a costly floral scent that I did not own. I stayed perfectly still in the darkness, hearing his steady breathing, while the picture of his hand on her back was seared in my mind. The picture was from September 7th, 2024. That was the night he said he had a work dinner. At 3 a.m., I realized I had to do something. I got out of bed and went into our home office. Graham hardly ever went into that little room. I shut the door, switched on the lamp, and powered on my laptop. I typed Deanna Cole, forensic accountant, Austin, into the search bar. Her business website appeared first. Her credentials were very impressive. She had 15 years of experience looking into financial crimes for legal and private customers. She had previously been with a large accounting company in New York. She was obviously a serious professional. My stomach churned as I looked at the monitor. Why would an expert in financial crime be investigating my husband? What was going on? And why give me those photos? I thought back over the past 6 months. Graham had been acting differently. It was a series of little things, not one big event. He was taking more business trips. He would get home late and say it was because of work. He began to take phone calls in a different room. A silence had grown between us. I felt that even when he was right next to me, his mind was somewhere else entirely. I told myself it was just pressure from his job, but now I had to ask myself if I had just been believing a comforting story. At 9 in the morning, the garage door opened loudly. I was in the kitchen pretending to read the Sunday paper. Graham came in, wearing a polo shirt and khaki pants for his golf game. He kissed me quickly, got some coffee, and grabbed a granola bar. I have a 10 o'clock tea time, he announced. I am with Johnson from the investment firm. I should be back around 3. That sounds wonderful, dear, I said, my voice unnaturally bright. Enjoy your game. He squeezed my shoulder gently before leaving. I listened for his car to drive away. As soon as it was quiet, I sent a text to Diana. Can we talk? I have to see you. Her response came right away. Let us meet at the coffee place on South Lamar at 11 o'clock. Do not bring anyone. She chose Cosmic Coffee, a well known Austin cafe with art on the walls and powerful coffee. When I got there, Diana was sitting at a small table in a secluded spot. She observed me carefully as I approached. Thank you for seeing me, I said, taking a seat. Of course, she responded. I was not sure you would reach out. I almost did not, I confessed, my breath unsteady. How did you find these pictures? She answered without hesitation. I look into financial crimes. Your husband's company came up in a different case. I knew your name. I saw him with her several times, and it did not seem professional. I thought you had a right to know what was happening. Who is she? I asked quietly. Diana showed me her tablet. It displayed a work profile. Her name is Natasha Mercer, and she is 29. She is a junior partner at your husband's company. She started there 2 years ago, Diana stated. They brought her on as an analyst, and she got a promotion last year. I could only look at the photo. She was stunning, with a polished and self assured air. She was the kind of woman Graham would always admire. They work together, I said, my voice empty. It could be nothing. Diana moved to the next image. July 2024, she said. They attended a conference in San Antonio. They were in the same hotel, on the same floor, and checked in only 20 minutes apart. She showed another. August 2024. He said he was working late 3 nights that week. I have security video of them leaving in the same car. She swiped one more time. September. They were spotted at the Four Seasons Hotel twice. The room felt heavy, and I struggled to breathe. Lillian, Diana said softly, I am so sorry, but this is not a business relationship. I leaned back in my chair, my hands shaking. Why are you doing this for me? We are complete strangers. She waited a moment. Let's just say I have been where you are now. I feel a woman deserves to have all the information before she makes a choice that will alter her entire life. Her tone hinted at a difficult past that I knew I should not ask about. So what do I do now? I asked. Allow me to help you investigate this discreetly, she proposed. We can get all the proof before you say anything to him. Bank statements, emails, all of it. I was hesitant. This entire situation felt like a terrible nightmare. Just yesterday, my life had been perfectly fine. Now I was scheming with a woman I just met against my husband. Okay, I finally agreed. But there is one thing I need to do on my own first. The drive home was a fog. I went straight to our home office and opened our joint bank account online. Everything seemed normal. I could see the mortgage payments, utility bills, and food expenses. Then I attempted to access my personal trust fund. It was left to me by my grandmother and held $850,000. Graham had always said we should let him manage it so it could grow. But this time a message appeared. Access denied. Please see your financial institution. My heart started to race. I tried one more time and saw the same message. I quickly called the bank's customer support line. My name is Lillian Grant. I am unable to get into my account that ends in 4739. One moment, Mrs. Hayes. I could hear typing on a keyboard. It looks like your account needs to be verified in person because of some recent activity. Are you able to visit our branch on Monday morning? the representative asked. What kind of activity? I asked firmly. I apologize, but I cannot share those details with you over the phone. We can go over it all with you when you come in. I ended the call with a trembling hand. Why was I blocked from my own account? Graham had always managed our money. He was much more skilled at it than I was, but the account was only in my name. Diana's card sat on my desk. This was about something bigger than just an affair. I did not get any sleep that Sunday. By Monday morning, I felt nauseous. I wore a navy blazer, an outfit that projected more confidence than I actually had. I drove to the bank on Congress Avenue, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. I entered the large building at precisely 9 o'clock and told the receptionist my name. She gave a polite smile, made a brief call, and a woman in her 50s with a warm expression came to greet me. She was dressed in a professional gray suit. Mrs. Hayes, my name is Patricia Miller, the manager of this branch. I appreciate you coming. Please follow me. Her office was small but organized. It was decorated with family photos, a large plant, and had the low hum of an air conditioner. She offered me a seat and then opened my file on her computer. So, she started with a gentle tone. We placed a hold on your online account due to some unusual transactions. This is a normal security measure that we take. She typed for a second. Allow me to pull up the history for your trust fund. I leaned forward, my heart pounding in my chest. The screen displayed a very long list of transactions. Each and every one of them was a withdrawal. This is what raised a red flag, Patricia said, scrolling down the list. Over the last 9 months, a constant series of transfers has been moving out of this account. They were all authorized, so no fraud warnings were triggered. However, the high volume of transfers caused our system to flag it for a manual review. Authorized by who? I asked. My voice was just a whisper. She pointed at the monitor. In December of 2023, $8,500 was sent to Hayes Portfolio Management. In January of 2024, $7,200 was sent to HM Capital. In February of 2024, $9,800 was sent to Hayes Properties. The list continued. March, April, May, and so on, right through September. The full amount taken was $67,500. I looked at the screen until the numbers started to blur. I never approved any of these transfers, I stated. Patricia's professional look changed to one of genuine concern. Our system indicates they were all completed using a power of attorney that you signed in 2018. What? I was completely stunned. No, that is impossible. I did sign a paper in 2018, but Graham told me it was just to help him manage our investments. It was a special type. It was supposed to only give him the power to shift funds between investment accounts, not to withdraw them. Patricia paused, then opened a drawer and took out a folder. This is the document we have on file, she explained, sliding it across the desk to me. It was a general power of attorney. I quickly read through the complicated legal language on the first page, and then I saw it on the second page, my own signature at the very bottom. It was my handwriting, flawless down to the final curve, but I had no recollection of ever signing this. I looked at the first page one more time. This is a general power of attorney. That's not right. I only agreed to a limited one. A very serious expression appeared on Patricia's face. Mrs. Hayes, this document was certified by an official notary. This has been on file for 6 years, the banker said, pointing to a signature at the base of the page. The notary public is Natasha Mercer. Her Texas commission number is 87392. I felt as if all the oxygen had been pulled from the room. That is his co-worker, I whispered. She is the woman in the photographs. Patricia gently closed the folder. You might need a moment to take this all in. No, I said, sitting up straighter. I want copies of all of it. Every single transaction and every single document. Of course, she said. Then she waited a moment. Should I assist you in filing a claim for fraud? I thought about her offer for a moment. Reporting the fraud now would freeze his accounts, and Graham would know that I knew his secret. Not right now, I told her. I need to understand the full situation first. By the time I returned to my car, my whole body was shaking. I sat there, holding the folder, staring at that final number, $67,500. Every last cent was gone. He had taken it all slowly over the past 9 months. The withdrawals were small enough not to raise any flags, but they were all part of a cold and calculated scheme. He was stealing from me during our entire time together. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Graham. Good morning, my dear. My meeting with the client is going long. You should treat yourself to a nice lunch. I just looked at his words. They were so normal, so casual, as if he had not just taken $67,000 from my account. This was so much worse than an affair. My hands were shaking as I dialed Diana's number. She answered on the very first ring. This is much bigger than an affair, I said, my voice breaking. He took money from me, $67,000. Tell me exactly where you are. I'm at the Wells Fargo downtown. Do not move. Do not call him. Do not do anything else. I will get there in 10 minutes. Then she hung up. I sat in my car, holding onto that folder, feeling the entire weight of our 8 years together fall down on me. I had given that man everything. He had my faith, my love, my future, and my life savings. And the whole time it was all a complete lie. A message popped up on my phone. It was Graham's mother, asking if we were still coming to dinner on Friday night. I dismissed it. I realized I was living with a complete stranger. Perhaps I always had. After 10 minutes, a silver car parked next to mine. Diana stepped out, walked over, and knocked on my window. I unlocked the door, and she slipped inside. Let me see it all, she said firmly. I gave her the folder. She studied the papers, her face hardening with each page. She stopped cold at the power of attorney document. Natasha Mercer, she whispered. She's a notary, but I would bet anything her license is a forgery. How did he manage this? He had to have switched the papers, I said. My signature was on a document with limited power. He must have inserted fake pages that his mistress notarized. Diana met my gaze, her look intense. Lillian, I have to tell you something before we go any further. I held my breath. It is very likely this is not the first time he has done something like this, she said, and you are probably not his only target. Her statement settled in the car like a heavy frost. What are you saying? She closed the folder and faced me directly. I'm saying Graham Hayes does this often. To stop him, we have to locate the other women. We drove to Diana's apartment in East Austin. The area was filled with little houses and apartment complexes, with cafes and food vendors on every corner. Her apartment was snug, with a single bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living area just large enough for a couch and a small table. The apartment's small size was not what I noticed when I walked in. It was the wall. A massive corkboard covered the living room's entire surface. It was filled with papers, photos, and diagrams. Red string linked various items together. It was like something from a detective series, only this was not a show. This was my reality. Please sit down, Diana offered, gesturing to the sofa. But first, I need you to promise you will listen to everything before you speak. I nodded slowly, my throat tight. All right. She took a different folder from the table and handed it over. This is Natasha Mercer. She is 29 and has been a junior partner at Hayes Capital since 2022. She paused deliberately. But her story has another chapter. I opened the folder. The first page was a marriage certificate. It was issued in Clark County, Nevada on June 14, 2012. The names on the document were Graham Michael Hayes and Natasha Ann Sullivan. I saw the words, but my mind refused to understand. He had been married to her. That is right, Diana confirmed. She reached over and turned to the next document. It was a final notice of divorce, and their marriage officially ended in October of 2015. I just stared at her, completely confused. He told me I was the one true love of his life. He promised he had never been married before. In a way, he told the truth. The divorce was finalized a whole year before you two met. Then she took out her phone tapped the screen a few times and showed it to me. There were tons of pictures of Graham and Natasha having dinner, drinking at a bar, and relaxing on a bright beach. They never truly split up, Diana said softly. The divorce was only on paper. They have been partners in this all along. Sickness washed over me. Why? I breathed. Why pretend to be divorced? Because it is simpler to run a con when people think you are not associated. Diana stood and walked to the board. She gestured to a section marked Victims. I have found 3 other women so far. He did the exact same thing to all of them. She pointed to the first section. Target number 1, early 2016 in Denver, Colorado. A career woman in her early 30s. Graham was with her for 8 months, convinced her to invest in a business, took $90,000, and then disappeared. What was her name? I needed to know. Diana's face hardened and she turned her head. I will tell you that information later. But trust me, she is a real woman who has a very strong reason to want him to pay for what he did. Her hands were shaking just a little as she pointed to the next spot, but I did not press her. Her refusal to look at me revealed this was much more personal than she let on. She moved to the next column. Target number 2, Jessica Moore, from 2018 in Phoenix, Arizona, a 30-year-old director of marketing. Graham repeated his scheme. A made-up investment, false paperwork, and $82,000 vanished, she continued. Target number 3, Rachel Torres, from 2020 in Houston, Texas, a 33-year-old physician. He stole $115,000 from her. She went to the police, but by that time Graham had already relocated to Austin. I stood up on wobbly legs and stepped toward the board. It was filled with dates, maps of cities, and pictures of Graham with each woman. In every photo, they looked incredibly happy holding his hand, the perfect picture of a loving couple. So that makes me number 4, I said, my voice hollow. That is right. It appears that every 2 years he chooses a new city, finds a new woman, steals her money, and lives with Natasha. I faced her. How did you find all of this out? Diana crossed her arms. I am very good at what I do, and I have my own reasons for investigating men like Graham. Her voice hinted at something more, a story she was not ready to tell, but I decided not to ask, not yet. Why me? I asked. What made me special? You fit his ideal target description perfectly, Diana said. You are accomplished, self-reliant, have money, you are in your early 30s and probably ready to settle down. My mind flashed back to the architecture event where we met. I was 24, happy about my first big design, and so full of optimism. He was so handsome, so self-assured, and he made me feel like the most interesting woman alive. He said he wanted to marry me, start a family, and spend his life with me. It was all an act, I murmured, the entire time. Yes, I sank back on the couch, my hands trembling. 8 years. I gave 8 years of my life to a man who only viewed me as a way to get money. I was just a target. Lillian, Diana said, sitting next to me. This is a bigger problem than the local police can handle. This is interstate fraud, with targets in several states. We need to contact the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The FBI? I said, my heart racing. I need some time to think. This is about my husband, about my whole world. I understand, she said gently, but think about the other women. Think about who he might target next. I closed my eyes. I knew she was right, but turning my marriage into a federal case felt like jumping into an abyss. Just let me get through this evening, I said. I will call you tomorrow with my choice. Diana nodded. All right, but Lillian, be extremely careful tonight. Do not give him any sign that you know. I will not. The trip home was a daze. The lights of the city blurred outside my car. When I got to the house, Graham's car was in the driveway. I watched him from the kitchen window as he cut vegetables and hummed a tune. He seemed so ordinary, just like the man I thought I knew. In a moment, I had to go inside. I had to pretend everything was fine and ask about his day, and he would tell me another untruth. Our entire 8 years together had been an untruth. How much more of this could I take? By Tuesday morning, I had decided. I waited for Graham to leave for his fake early meeting with a client. Then I called Diana. She answered immediately. Arrange the meeting with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, I told her. I am ready. There was a brief silence before she spoke. Are you 100% certain? Yes. I took a deep breath. I keep thinking about Rachel, Jessica, and the first woman in Denver. If I stay silent, he will find another person to harm. Okay, Diana replied softly. I will set it up. Can you meet this afternoon? Yes. Be at the Federal Bureau of Investigation office at 2 o'clock. I will text you the location. The building was plain, located in North Austin, made of concrete with tinted glass. I parked in a visitor spot that Tuesday. I showed my identification to the security guard inside. Another agent led me to a meeting room on the third floor. Diana was there with a man in his early 40s. He was in a well tailored suit, with dark hair and a tired look that said he had seen it all. Mrs. Grant, he said, standing up to greet me. I am Special Agent Michael Torres with the Financial Crimes Unit. I appreciate you coming in. I shook his hand and took a seat. My palms were wet. Miss Cole has briefed me on the situation, Agent Torres said, as he opened the folder. But I need to hear the whole story from you from the very beginning. So I told him everything. I described the pictures Diana showed me. I explained the $67,500 that vanished from my inheritance. I talked about the fake legal paper Natasha Mercer had notarized. I detailed the clear line of victims from Denver to Phoenix and on to Houston and Austin. I revealed his secret marriage to Natasha and the fake divorce that followed. I showed him the social media photos, proving they were always together. Agent Torres listened quietly, jotting down notes without any expression. After I finished, he leaned back. Miss Cole told me she's been giving us information on your husband's firm for the last 18 months. I turned my head sharply to Diana. Is that true? 18 months? You've been looking into him for that long? Diana's expression hardened. I will explain it all later. Agent Torres needs to stick to the facts for now. Agent Torres flipped through some papers in a folder. Mrs. Grant, we started a file on Hayes Capital Advisors back in mid 2023. We had 3 clients file complaints with the Securities and Exchange Commission stating their investment profits had disappeared. Your husband settled with them out of court each time, and the complaints were withdrawn. We suspected he was buying their silence, but we couldn't prove it. He slid a single page across the table toward me. Your story, along with the pattern of victims Miss Cole found, gives us what we need for a federal search warrant. I looked down at the paper. You are going to search his office. It was scheduled for Thursday morning at 9. Torres's voice stayed steady and calm. He told me I had to pretend everything was normal until that time. He asked if I could do that. I pictured our life, making him dinner and sleeping beside him, acting like I knew nothing. I said yes, I could handle it. Wednesday was the hardest day of my life. I went to work, I sat through meetings, I answered emails. When I came home, Graham was in the kitchen with a glass of wine, making pasta. He smiled. Hello, darling. How was your day? It was fine, I answered with a cheerful voice, placing my bag on the counter. Just extremely busy. He came over and gave me a kiss. You seem a bit stressed. Is something wrong? I replied, no, we just have a major deadline at work. He said, you have to learn how to relax. He poured me a glass of wine. I love you, he said. I made myself smile. I love you too. The words felt heavy in my mouth. Graham wanted to be intimate that night. I just went along with it, feeling cold and distant, my thoughts a world away. He was asleep in moments, with his arm resting over me. I lay awake in the darkness, listening to his even breathing. I could not stop thinking about who this man sleeping next to me truly was. Thursday morning was gray and cold. Graham left for his office at 8:30, just like he always did, kissing my forehead as he left. I waited 10 minutes, then I texted Torres. He's at the office. At exactly 9 o'clock, my phone rang from an unknown number. Mrs. Grant, this is Torres. We are serving the warrant now. Your husband will probably call you. You must stay calm. He also said, act surprised. Okay? I sat on the couch, my hands trembling as I stared at the clock. 9:15, 9:20, 9:25. At 9:30 my phone started ringing. It was Graham. I breathed in deeply and slowly, then answered. Lillian. His voice was strained and panicked, nothing like his usual confident self. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is here. They are taking everything from my office. All the computers, the client folders, even my own phone. The whole place is full of agents. What? I asked, making my voice sound shocked. Why? What's going on? I have no idea. They claim it is about an old client, Thompson, from that investment fund. They are making a huge deal out of this. My lawyer is coming. This is all just a big mistake. Are you okay? I am fine. Don't you worry. This is just a massive misunderstanding. It will all be sorted out in a few days. Okay, I said quietly. Please come home when you can. He ended the call. I put the phone down, but I could not get my hands to stop shaking. It was happening. Graham came home that night filled with rage, pacing the living room like a trapped animal. His tie was loose, his hair was a mess, and his face was flushed with an anger he could barely contain. They humiliated me in front of my own staff, he said through clenched teeth. A dozen agents just walked in, like I was a common crook. They threw everything into boxes. They made my staff stand outside while they searched. What were they trying to find? I asked, my voice soft and concerned. Some old client says I messed up his account. It is nonsense. The guy is just angry he lost money when the market went down. He knew the risks. I watched him lie so effortlessly, his face looking sincere even then. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. I hope it all gets fixed soon, I said. It will be, he answered, running a hand through his messy hair. My attorney guarantees they have nothing. This will all be gone in a week. Then he pulled me into a hug, squeezing me tight. I am just so sorry you have to go through this. I just shut my eyes. It is okay. But it was not okay at all. Later that night, long after Graham was fast asleep, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text from an unlisted number. The accountants are working. Initial results show your husband's company is a Ponzi scheme. We've identified at least 40 victims already. See me at my office tomorrow at 9 in the morning. Come by yourself. Do not tell anyone. Torres. I stared at the message, reading it over 3 times while my heart hammered in my chest. 40 victims. This was so much bigger than just me. It was worse than the 4 other women Diana discovered. Graham had been running a Ponzi scheme for years. I deleted the message, placed the phone back on the table, and lay down next to the man I was married to for 8 years, the man I did not know at all. I got to the Federal Bureau of Investigation office at 9 o'clock on Friday morning. My hands were still shaking from the night before. I had hardly slept after reading the text from Torres about the scheme, the 40 victims, and the real scale of Graham's crimes, which were far worse than I ever imagined. Agent Torres led me to the same conference room. Diana was already there. She looked pale, and her eyes were red and swollen like she had been crying all night. Mrs. Grant, Torres began, pointing to a chair for me. Our forensics team discovered something among your husband's office documents. I think you need to see this. He pushed a simple folder across the table toward me. My hands shook as I reached out to open it. Inside there was a single medical bill. The paper felt thick and official. It came from the Phoenix Men's Health Clinic and was dated May 17th, 2013. The service listed was a vasectomy, and the patient's name was Graham Michael Hayes. His birth date was covered with a black marker. The charge was $850, paid with a Visa card ending in 4729. I stared at the paper, the words blurring as my entire world started to collapse. Does your husband have any health issues we should be aware of? Torres asked. His voice was gentle but direct. No, I was able to say. My own voice sounded distant and unfamiliar. He's perfectly healthy. He has always been. Why are you asking? This is a receipt from a clinic in Phoenix. It's for a vasectomy performed in May of 2013. The name, date of birth, and social security number are all a match for your husband. The billing address is an apartment he rented in Phoenix at that time. I looked up from the document to the agent's face, a heavy pressure building in my chest. That's not possible. We've been trying to have a baby for years, since 2018. He wouldn't do that. He couldn't. Diana's voice was soft and full of sorrow. Lillian, I discovered this when I was looking at his old financial statements. A credit card charge led me directly to this medical record. I am so sorry. It has to be a mistake, I said, my voice getting louder. It could be a different Graham Hayes. His identity could have been stolen. Torres simply shook his head. The social security number and the address match perfectly. We verified it all with the clinic. It is your husband. He had this procedure done 3 years before he met you. The moments that followed are a complete fog. Torres continued to speak about money, deception, and more evidence, but I could not process any of it. A loud buzzing noise filled my head, like I was underwater. Graham had a vasectomy in 2013. That was 3 entire years before we met at that architecture event in Houston. He waited 3 years to say he wanted a life with me, a family, and to be together forever. My head was spinning as 8 years of my life flashed by. Each memory now felt poisoned with a horrible new truth. Every single moment seemed like a deception. 2 years thus into our marriage, in 2018, I mentioned seeing a doctor about our fertility. A year of trying and timing everything had led to nothing. Graham just gently kissed my head. He said, "Sweetheart, let's wait a little longer. You're putting too much stress on yourself. That can stop it from happening." I went along with it. I had complete faith in him. It seemed like he was just being thoughtful. Then one night, Graham walked in holding a document. It was a sperm analysis from a lab. He looked absolutely crushed. The results showed his sperm count was low. He told me his doctor blamed it on stress and said not to be concerned. We just had to continue trying. I accepted his story. I held him close and told him we would be fine. I promised we would handle it as a team. But a heavy feeling grew inside me, a deep guilt that maybe the issue was with me. Later, in 2022, after 6 years of marriage, I brought up the idea of in vitro fertilization. We could afford it, we had choices. Other people I knew had done it successfully. Graham's face clouded over. "Lil, that treatment costs a fortune and it would be really tough on you. Let's not give up on the natural way. We still have many years ahead of us." So I dropped the subject. I believed he knew what was right for our future. Then came 2024. We had been married for 8 years, and I had my 32nd birthday that June. My doctor kindly reminded me that fertility can decrease after 35. She said if a family was our goal, we should act now. I mentioned this to Graham at dinner. "I think it is time we saw a specialist, just for a consultation." He smiled warmly and took my hand. "We will soon, I swear. Once I finish this huge project at work, I will put all my attention on us, when things are less stressful." There was always a reason to wait, another delay, a new excuse, and I fell for all of them. "Mrs. Grant," I snapped back to the present, seeing Torres watching me. His face was all business, but his gaze was kind. My throat felt tight as I answered. "That lab report. He gave me a paper 4 years ago. It said he had a low sperm count." Diana moved closer. "Do you have a copy of that report?" My words came out flat. "I keep all our important papers. It will be in our file cabinet." Torres nodded once, sharply. "We need you to bring it in today. Our laboratory must examine it. I have a feeling it is not authentic." By 1 p.m., I was back in our empty house. Graham sent a text saying he was with his lawyer and would not be back until late. I did not reply. I went directly to the home office, his supposed workspace, and opened the filing cabinet. All the files were in perfect order, just as I had arranged them. I was always the one who put things in order. I located a manila folder with the label Graham Medical. Just one page was inside. It was from the Phoenix Fertility Center for a semen analysis. Graham Hayes. The figures blurred as I read. Sperm count was 40 million per milliliter, which was noted as low. A normal count was between 40 and 300 million. A Dr. Michael Stevens signed it, dated March 15th, 2020. I looked at the professional font and neat signature. I took out my phone and looked up the Phoenix Fertility Center. Nothing came up. I tried searching with Arizona added. Still blank. I called the number on the page. An automated voice told me, "The number you have called is no longer in service." I drove to the FBI office with the documents safe in a plastic protector. My own hands felt foreign on the steering wheel, and my thoughts were completely empty. Torres was waiting for me and led me directly to the forensics department. We entered a sterile white lab on the second story, full of high-tech gear. A woman in her 50s with short gray hair and a white coat accepted the paper. She put it through a scanner, then into a device that washed it in infrared light. I waited on an uncomfortable plastic chair. After a half hour, she looked up from her monitor. "This is not real," she said, her tone matter of fact. "The design is a generic medical template from the internet." She told me it was made on a personal computer and run through a normal printer. She magnified the image on the screen so I could look. "Can you see this part?" she said, gesturing toward the monitor. "The signature from the doctor is just a picture." It was dropped right onto the form. Next, she searched a database. The Phoenix Fertility Center is not a real place. It has never been. The Arizona Medical Board has no file on it, no license to operate, nothing at all. Torres then made eye contact with me. "Your husband created this paper to lie to you. He wanted you to believe there was still a chance, to make you chase a dream that could never come true." I fell back into the chair as if my legs had disappeared. Later in the meeting room, Diana gave me a water bottle. "Take a breath," she said softly. "Just focus on breathing." But the air felt thick, like I was underwater. 8 years, I murmured. I spent 8 years believing we were making a life for our future children. Every month I held a negative pregnancy test and I put the blame on myself. I was convinced something was wrong with me, my age or my anxiety. My voice broke. He got a vasectomy long before we met. He never planned on having kids with me. The entire marriage was a lie. Diana rested a supportive hand on my arm. "This is a terrible shock. I am truly sorry." Through my tears, I looked at Torres. What was the point? Why go through all this? Why get married if he did not want children? Torres's face was stern. "Children make things messy, Mrs. Grant," he explained. "They lead to support payments, fights over custody, official records, and DNA evidence. Someone like Graham avoids those kinds of ties. He likes to be able to live without a trace. A clean exit, like our life together, was just a contract he could cancel when it stopped suiting him." I remembered all those nights crying on the bathroom floor after another failed test. I remembered blaming my own body and my own stress. For so many years, I held on to that shame, thinking I was letting him down, that I was the problem. But it was all a complete fabrication. Every single thing he told me, every vow he made, was a carefully constructed lie. When Torres walked me to my car, the sun was going down, creating long dark shapes in the lot. The evening sky was a beautiful blend of orange and pink, but it looked ugly and out of place in the disaster my world was now. "Mrs. Grant," he began quietly, "we have something else to discuss, but I wanted to wait until you were ready." I turned to him, feeling completely empty inside. What more could they tell me? He hesitated. "This is about Diana, and the real reason she was looking into your husband." Going home was out of the question. I could not see Graham, could not pretend everything was fine. Not after this. I stayed in my car for 10 minutes just looking at my phone screen. Then I typed out a message. Graham answered right away. "Staying at Rebecca's, just need a night to myself." I wrote back, "All right, honey, hope you feel better. Love you." A red heart emoji popped up. That symbol used to make me happy. Now it was part of the deception. I started the car and drove east. Diana answered her door before I even knocked. I had a feeling you would come by, she said softly. I walked in. The wall covered in her investigation materials was still there. It seemed more sinister than before. I sank onto her sofa. I feel like a stranger to myself, I said, my voice empty. My entire life is fake. Diana came back with 2 steaming cups of tea. She took a seat opposite me, her face a mask. I can only guess how you must feel. Can you really? I met her gaze. Agent Torres told me there was more to the story. Her hand trembled as she set down her cup. I have been wondering how to tell you this. There is no easy way, I said. After the day I have had, just tell me. She inhaled slowly and deeply. Remember when I said I was on Graham's case for 18 months? That was not entirely true. The investigation has been going on for almost 8 years. I was speechless. 8 years? We have been married for 8 years. She replied softly, yes, I am aware. An awful, chilling sensation started to creep through me. How would you know the length of our marriage? Because my surveillance of Graham began in 2016, immediately after he did the same thing to me. The world seemed to tilt around me. The same thing? What are you talking about? Diana walked to the window and faced away from me. Lillian, I was not being truthful. Our meeting at that professional event was not an accident. We were there, but I knew who you were long before that. I got to my feet. What does that mean? Please, have a seat. I will tell you everything. But I could not move. Diana faced me again. In 2016, I was in Denver. I was 25 years old, fresh out of school, working as a forensic accountant. She stopped for a moment. I met Graham Hayes at a work event. He was so charismatic, so accomplished. He was perfect. We dated for 8 months. He asked me to marry him. I accepted. He put you through this as well, I said in a low voice. He did. And then he vanished with $90,000 of the money my family left me. Diana's tone was now hard as steel. I was never going to let him get away with it. I used my accounting background to track him and his methods. He was in Phoenix in 2018, then moved to Houston in 2020 before he settled in Austin. She looked right at me. I have spent 6 years putting a case together, digging up records, and speaking with his other victims. But I could not take this to the Federal Bureau of Investigation until I had absolute proof of his crimes that crossed state lines. One woman's story sounds personal, not criminal. People simply dismiss it. But 4 women from 4 different states with the exact same story, now that gets federal attention. I finally had everything I needed in 2023. That was when I contacted Agent Torres. Her expression was full of regret. When I learned he married you, I wanted so badly to warn you, but my case was still too weak. I needed more time to build it. That meeting at the domain, I realized, the awful truth dawning on me. That was not an accident. No, she admitted, I arranged for it to happen. My stomach turned. You were using me. At first, yes, you were a piece of the puzzle. Her voice trembled. But then I started to know you. I realized you were just like I had been. You trusted him, you loved him, and your whole world was about to shatter. I could not let him do it to someone else. So you lied. My voice grew louder. Everyone in my life has lied to me. Tears welled in Diana's eyes. I know, and I am so, so sorry, but Lillian, everything I discovered is real. The affair, the theft, the vasectomy, all of it is true. I might have arranged our meeting, but the facts are solid, and there is more. I stood up and took my purse. I cannot do this. I do not trust anyone. I headed for the door. Lillian, wait, Diana called out, and I paused. Tomorrow, Agent Torres needs us both to come in. They have uncovered things we had no idea about. I kept my back to her. What else could there possibly be? I do not know, she answered softly, but it is very serious. Torres called me 3 times. He said it is urgent. We see it before Graham's lawyers get wind of it. I was frozen, my hand on the doorknob. What time? 9 in the morning. I nodded once and walked out. I found a rundown motel off Interstate 35. Its neon sign flickering. I paid in cash for a room that smelled like stale cigarette smoke. I lay on the bed, fully clothed. My phone buzzed. A text from Graham. Hope Rebecca is looking after you. I miss you. I flipped my phone over and stared at the water stained ceiling. 8 years I had been with Graham, and for those same 8 years, Diana had been hunting him. Everyone had lied to me, everyone had used me. I squeezed my eyes shut. Tomorrow, Torres would show us what else he had found. Tomorrow, I had to see Diana again, the woman who pretended to be my friend to save me. Tomorrow, I would find out just how deep the nightmare went. But tonight, in this awful motel room, I finally let myself cry. I did not sleep a wink. I just lay on top of the covers, still in my clothes. I stared at the ceiling until sunlight peeked through the cheap curtains. At 8:30, I was driving back to the Federal Bureau of Investigation building. My hands felt steady on the steering wheel. The anger had faded. In its place was just a cold emptiness. Torres was waiting for me in the lobby. Mrs. Grant, thank you for coming back. You mentioned new information. I do, I confirmed as he led me to an elevator. Miss Cole is already upstairs. My stomach knotted up. I was not ready to face her. I still had not forgiven her, but I followed Torres into the elevator. Diana stood by the window in the conference room. She glanced up when I came in. Her face was pale, her eyes red and exhausted. She had not slept either, I realized. Lillian, please. I raised my hand to stop her. Let us just hear what Agent Torres has to say. She nodded and took a step back. Torres closed the door and motioned for us to sit down. He took several documents from a large folder and placed them on the table. Over the last 48 hours, my team has reviewed everything from Hayes Capital Advisors. He took a breath. What we uncovered is far worse than we thought. Your husband was operating a Ponzi scheme. I just stared at him, speechless. A Ponzi scheme? Yes. Starting in 2021, he defrauded 43 investors of nearly $4.7 million. The number felt impossible. Torres slid a spreadsheet across the table toward me. It was a list of names, dates, and dollar amounts. Hayes Capital guaranteed clients returns of 12 to 18% on real estate deals. But he never actually invested a penny, Torres explained. He used money from new investors to pay off the old ones. It is a classic setup. I looked over the list of people he had swindled. It was full of retirees and small business owners. I saw a teacher, a nurse, people who trusted Graham with their life savings. The whole thing started to fall apart in mid 2024, Torres went on. More money was going out than was coming in. So your husband started using the money from his romance scams to prop it up. Diana added, the $90,000 he took from me. And cash from the other women, he funneled all of it into Hayes Capital. That is right, Torres confirmed. The scams were just a source of quick cash to keep the whole thing from imploding. I felt sick to my stomach. And Natasha? I asked. She was a full partner. She managed all client communication, created fake statements, and forged signatures. My team found emails between them dating back to 2021. They discussed shell companies and ways to prevent clients from cashing out. Torres then handed me a printed email from Graham to Natasha, dated September 8th, 2024. It read, the Thompson Group is getting suspicious. I need $500,000 to pay them off. Can we pull the rest from Lillian's trust? I read it a second time, disbelieving. My entire life was being talked about like it was a line item on a balance sheet. I whispered, how much more was he going to take? Torres gave me a sympathetic look. Their emails show a plan to drain the rest of your trust fund, about $783,000. The room started to spin, almost $800,000. That was every penny my grandmother left me. It was everything I had been saving for our future. Diana asked, so what happens now? Torres replied, we are filing federal charges for multiple counts of fraud. If convicted, your husband is looking at 40 years or more in prison. Miss Mercer could get 30 years, 40 years. Graham would be 78 when he was released. What about the people he conned? I asked. Will they ever get their money back? We are freezing all of his assets, including offshore accounts and real estate. Torres added, whatever we recover will go toward restitution. But honestly, in cases like these, Victims are lucky to see 30 to 50% of their money again. I thought about the teacher and the nurse from his list. A loss like that would ruin them forever. 43 people, I said softly, plus the four of us. He destroyed 47 families. Yes, Diana said quietly. Lillian, I am so sorry. I should have been honest with you from the beginning. I looked at her. She looked completely exhausted and fragile. She looked just as shattered as I felt. You manipulated me, I said, meeting her gaze. I know. You used me as bait to catch him. I know I did, she answered, her voice trembling, and I cannot tell you how sorry I am. But everything we uncovered, the other women, the money, the scheme, it was all true. I never lied about the facts, only about how I discovered them. I stayed silent for a long moment before I spoke. You dedicated 7 years of your life to hunting him down. You put your own life on hold just so he could not get away with it. I did, she whispered. You found all his other victims. You brought in the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That was me. You saved me, I finally said. It is not how I wanted to be saved, but you did it. Tears began to fill Diana's eyes. I walked over and put my arms around her. She held on to me, shaking. I whispered, I am still so angry, but you were right. We have to finish this together. Agent Torres cleared his throat. Mrs. Grant, we need to ask you for one last thing. I let go of Diana and wiped my eyes. What is it? We need your help to get a confession on tape. He explained that without a confession, Graham's lawyers could argue it was just a bad business venture. We need to prove his intent to defraud. What do you need me to do? I asked. Torres opened a drawer and took out a small black jewelry box. Inside was a beautiful silver necklace. This has a recording device inside. You are going to ask your husband to dinner at a quiet public restaurant, he instructed. You will wear the necklace. Your job is to get him to talk about the stolen money and the scheme. Our agents will be at a nearby table. The second he confesses, we move in and make the arrest. I stared at the necklace. You want me to wear a wire? Yes, and you have to act like nothing is wrong. I looked at Diana and she nodded in support. I will help you get ready. We will plan what you are going to say. You are not in this alone. I turned back to Agent Torres. How soon do you need this to happen? The sooner the better, he answered, before his lawyer finds out what we have. Sometime this week would be ideal. I picked up the heavy silver necklace. Okay, I said, I will do it. The drive home felt like I was driving to my own funeral. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. I had to remind myself to breathe. The necklace in my purse felt unbelievably heavy. I had just 6 days until I had to put it on. In 6 days, I would sit across from my husband and record him admitting to his crimes. But I had to survive tonight first. I needed to see him and act as if our entire life together was not a complete fabrication. The traffic light changed, so I kept driving. When I pulled up to our house, Graham's car was already there. I could see him through the kitchen window, moving around like it was just another ordinary day. He looked so perfectly normal. He did not seem like someone who had stolen $5 million. He did not look like a man who had destroyed 47 different lives. I shut off the engine and sat there for a second, my heart pounding inside my ribs. My phone buzzed with a message from Diana. You can handle this. Just pretend you are tired and stressed. Let him take care of you. I typed back a simple okay. Then I took a deep breath, got out of the car, and walked into the house. Graham was in his office, focused on his computer. The second he noticed me, his expression changed to one of worry and relief. If I did not know what was really happening, I might have thought it was love. Lillian, he said, getting up to give me a hug. Where have you been? I was so worried. I must have called you 10 times. I let him embrace me, even though every fiber of my being wanted to pull away. He was wearing the same cologne from our very first date. That scent used to make me feel safe. Now it just made me sick. I was at Rebecca's. I lied, my voice muffled against his shoulder. I just needed some space. That whole situation with the Federal Bureau of Investigation was really scary for me. He pulled back to hold my arms and looked into my face. I know, my love. I'm so sorry you had to deal with that, but everything will be all right. My lawyer has already spoken with them. They have absolutely nothing on me. Are you sure? I asked, letting my voice quiver just a little. It all seemed so serious. It is only one unhappy client, Graham replied, his voice changing to that smooth, confident tone he used with his investors, a man named Thompson. He lost some money and is trying to blame me for it. He filed a complaint, so the government is required to investigate. It is nothing more than a formality. My attorney thinks the entire case will be dismissed within a few weeks. Thompson, that was the name from the email that Agent Torres showed me. The one where Graham wrote that he needed $500,000 to keep the Thompson group quiet. I managed a nod. Oh, well, that is a huge relief. Exactly, he said, smiling as he squeezed my shoulders. I did not want to bother you with the details, but believe me, it is all being handled. I give you my word. I looked him directly in the eyes, and for the very first time I could see the monster that was hiding there. He sounded so honest and convincing. 8 years ago, I would have believed every single word. Even now, if I had not seen the proof myself, I might have been fooled. He was a true master of manipulation. Okay, I whispered. I believe you. The words felt like poison in my mouth. Graham insisted on cooking dinner. He made pasta and garlic bread and opened a nice bottle of wine. He moved around the kitchen without a single care, humming along to some of his favorite jazz music. I just sat and observed the precise way he minced the garlic. I watched as he tasted the sauce, added a little more seasoning, then poured wine into the skillet with a dramatic flair. He turned and noticed me watching. What is it? He asked with a smile. Oh, it is nothing, I said. I was just thinking about how lucky I am. His expression softened. My love, I am the lucky one. He walked around the island and bent down to kiss me. I kissed him back but felt completely hollow inside, like a robot. He did not seem to notice at all. You have been so patient with me, he said, gently tucking a strand of my hair back. With all the pressure from my job and the long nights, I know I have not been a very good husband. You were never my husband, I thought. You were just an actor playing a part. It is okay, I said instead. I know work has been overwhelming. Well, I am going to make it up to you. He went back to the stove to stir the pasta. Let us have a real date night this weekend, just the two of us, somewhere special. My heart started to beat faster. You mean like going out to a restaurant? Saturday night, he confirmed, smiling at me. How about Uchi? I know that is your favorite place. It feels like it has been forever since we last went. I was stunned. My mind was racing. He was handing me the perfect opportunity on a silver platter. This was the absolute best case scenario. It was exactly what the agents had been hoping for. Uchi, I repeated, trying to sound happy and surprised. That sounds lovely. Great, I will make a reservation for 7:30. We can dress up, have some sake, and order way too much sushi. He put the pasta on a plate and placed it in front of me with a little bit of a show. It will be just like the old times. But there were no old times. It was all a performance from the very beginning. In spite of that, I managed to smile. I cannot wait. After dinner, Graham turned on a basketball game. I said I needed to answer some work emails and went into our bedroom. I closed the door, sat on the bed, and sent a text to Diana. He asked me to dinner. Uchi. This Saturday at 7:30. It was his idea. Her reply came back almost instantly. Perfect. Torres will be so happy. Now we have 6 days to get you ready. How are you holding up? I looked at her message for a moment. I'm not sure. This is so much harder than I ever imagined. Watching him lie directly to my face. Diana texted back. I know, but you are doing an amazing job. It will all be over in 6 days. I hoped she was right, because 6 days felt like forever. I deleted our conversation, washed my face, and returned downstairs. Graham was on the couch with a beer, totally lost in the game. What is the score? I asked as I sat down next to him. We are winning by 12. He wrapped his arm around my shoulders and held me close. This feels nice, just you and me. All the stress is gone. I leaned my head on his shoulder because that is what the old version of me would have done. but deep down I was screaming silently. That night, I stared into the darkness long after Graham had fallen asleep. His arm felt heavy, like an anchor, pinning me down while he slept. The red numbers on the clock showed 2:47 in the morning. In only 6 days, I was going to meet him at Uchi restaurant. A hidden microphone would record everything he said. In 6 days, federal agents would take him away in handcuffs. But for now, I was his prisoner. I would have to wake up and pretend. I would have to smile when he smiled and laugh when he laughed. I had to act like I had no idea what kind of monster he truly was. Just 6 more days. That is 144 hours. I could get through that. I had survived much worse. I closed my eyes and made a silent promise about my future. After Graham was arrested, after the entire world knew the truth, I would never let another person make me feel so helpless again. 6 days until my life was mine again. 6 days to a new beginning. I could do this. I absolutely had to. On Sunday morning, I drove to the Federal Bureau of Investigation by myself. I had told Graham I was having brunch with an old friend from college. It was another lie, another performance in a long line of them. I was becoming quite good at it. Agent Torres was in the lobby waiting for me at 9 o'clock. He asked, "Mrs. Grant, are you prepared to start?" I was not prepared at all, but I just nodded yes. We went into a small training room with no windows. It had only a table, 2 chairs, and a wall of unfamiliar equipment. A woman who looked to be about 30 with dark hair was standing near the table holding a small jewelry box. Agent Torres made the introduction. "This is Special Agent Lisa Morgan, our tech specialist. She will walk you through the equipment." Agent Lisa offered a smile, but it did not quite reach her serious eyes. "Mrs. Grant, this is the device you will use Saturday night." She opened the box, revealing a beautiful silver necklace on a thin chain. It was simple and elegant, the kind of thing I would normally pick for a nice dinner. But this was not just jewelry, it was a tool. "It is activated by your voice," Lisa explained, lifting it from the box. "It will record up to 8 hours of audio. The microphone is hidden right here." She pointed to a tiny hole on the pendant. "This dot shows the battery level, but no one will see it unless they are looking for it." She handed it to me. The necklace felt heavier than it looked. "Go ahead and try it on," Torres said. "You need to get comfortable with how it feels." I fastened the clasp around my neck. The cool metal rested on my skin just below my collarbone. "Okay," Torres said, pulling his chair closer. "Let us go over what you need to say." For the next 2 hours we practiced. He sat across from me, asking me questions and showing me how to steer the conversation without making Graham suspicious. "Start by telling him you are worried," he instructed. "You are concerned about your finances. You have seen some withdrawals you did not authorize. Be emotional, but do not accuse him." I nodded my head and took notes. He will try to change the topic. When he does, you have to guide him back. Say something like, "I'm just so confused," or "Can you help me make sense of this?" Let him feel like he's in control, just calming his worried wife. "What if he does not want to talk?" I asked. "But what if he just shuts down on me?" Torres leaned in. "Then you switch your approach. Mention Natasha and the affair. A man with an ego that big cannot resist. He will want to explain himself if he thinks you know the truth." "What specifically do I need him to admit?" "Three things," Torres said, showing 3 fingers. "First, that he is the one who took the money. Second, that he forged the power of attorney form. And third, that this investment idea was a scam from the start. He might not use those words, but he has to admit his intentions. Those intentions are what make this a federal crime." My hands were trembling as I wrote it all down. He took the money. He forged the form. The scam was his plan. "You can do this," Torres said, his voice softening slightly. "You have lived with him for days, acting like everything is fine. This is just one more performance. The only difference is that this performance is being recorded." Later that Monday afternoon, I drove to Diana's apartment. She had turned her living room into a small stage with 2 chairs facing each other. She even had a fake menu she printed from Uchi. "We are going to run through a practice scene," she told me. I will play Graham. You need to practice asking the questions. I do not feel like I can do this. Yes, you can, she insisted, sitting down and putting her hands on the table. Now sit down. I took the seat across from her. Diana's entire demeanor changed. She sat up straighter, wearing a look of confidence I knew all too well. It was stunning how perfectly she could imitate him. Well, she began, in a perfect imitation of his voice. How was your day at work, my dear? I could only stare at her, completely speechless. Lillian, Diana said, her own voice returning, you have to answer me. Pretend that I am really him. I took a deep, calming breath. Work was okay. It was just a very busy day. She gave me Graham's typical smile. Good. I'm glad this entire situation with the Federal Bureau of Investigation is not bothering you too much. Actually, I started my voice weak. I wanted to ask you about something. What is it you wanted to ask? I was looking at our trust fund account last week. I saw some large withdrawals I do not remember making. It was for about $67,000. Diana, as Graham, looked concerned and leaned back. Oh, that was for our investments, honey. I already told you about it. You did? I do not remember signing anything for that. You signed the power of attorney for me back in 2018. Surely you remember that? I was silent. Agent Torres said to be calm, but all I wanted was to scream. Diana dropped the act. That was really good, but when he says that, you have to challenge him. Sound puzzled, not accusatory. I could say, but I only signed a limited power of attorney, but first I offered, not a general one. She nodded. Perfect. Keep that exact same tone. Force him to explain. Force him to lie to your face. We practiced for 3 solid hours. When we were finally done, I was completely exhausted. I cried 2 separate times. The first was when Diana's Graham called me naive. The second was when she told me, you were never good with finances, Lillian. That is the reason I had to take control. Graham had told me those very same words, words I used to believe were true. You are going to do an amazing job, Diana said, giving me a hug after our final practice. This Saturday, you will go into that restaurant and expose him. I will be right outside waiting for you the whole time. On Tuesday morning, I made an emergency appointment with my therapist, Dr. Rebecca Lawson. I had been her patient for 2 years, mainly because of work stress and our trouble having a child, but I had never told her the whole story about Graham until that day. I sat in her comfortable office, in a room with soft lights and a sofa that had seen countless tears. I told her the entire story. I talked about the affair, the missing money, the vasectomy, the huge con, and the recording device I would be wearing in just 4 days. Dr. Lawson listened without a word, her expression showing her usual gentle compassion. When I finished, she asked me, Lillian, do you feel as though you are betraying him? Yes, I confessed in a whisper, though I knew it made no sense. You are not the person who betrayed him. He is the one who betrayed you for 8 years. She leaned forward. What you will do on Saturday is not about revenge. This is about justice. You are doing this for yourself and for all of the other victims he has harmed. But what if I can't do it? What if he takes one look at me and sees right through me? You have been pretending for weeks now, Dr. Lawson gently reminded me. You have been waking up with him, eating dinner with him, and pretending everything is normal. You are so much stronger than you know, and you are not alone in this. I nodded my head, although I was not sure I really believed her. Graham got home on Wednesday night whistling a happy tune. He gave me a kiss on my forehead and poured some wine for both of us. He then casually mentioned that our dinner plans at Uchi were confirmed. Saturday night at 7:30, just us, he said with a big smile. I cannot wait. Me neither, I replied, with a smile of my own. And I meant it because in 3 more days this whole nightmare would end. That night, long after Graham fell asleep, I just lay there in the dark. My phone screen lit up with a text message from Diana. Asterisk. You can do this. We are all behind you. I wrote back. Asterisk. 3 more days. Asterisk. 3 more days. Was her reply. Asterisk. And then you will be free. I set my phone down and closed my eyes. 3 days until I could ask Graham why he decided to destroy my life. I had 3 days to prepare for the biggest performance of my life. I knew I had to see it through. There was no other way. On Thursday morning, I told my office I was sick. I could not sit in meetings about construction plans when I was about to wear a recording device to dinner with my husband. Instead, I just sat at my kitchen table and looked at a cup of coffee I had no intention of drinking. Lying in front of me was a list from Diana that had 3 names on it. They were 3 different women in 3 separate cities whose lives Graham Hayes had destroyed before he ever met me. I took a calming breath and then dialed the first phone number. A woman by the name of Rachel Torres answered after 2 rings. Hello? Hi, my name is Lillian Grant. Diana Cole suggested I give you a call. I am not sure where to begin. The line went silent for a second. Then she finally asked, You are his wife, right? Graham's wife? Yes, I answered, my voice trembling. How did you guess? I asked. Diana warned me he had found a new target. I'm just so incredibly sorry. I closed my eyes as hard as I could. I'm so sorry for everything he did to you as well. Rachel's voice sounded strong and distant. It was a story she had rehearsed through pain. It all happened in Houston back in 2020. We had been seeing each other for 8 months. He asked me to marry him on my birthday. 3 months later, he disappeared with $115,000 from my savings account. I reported it to the police. They told me it was a civil dispute. By the time I could find a lawyer, he was already gone. He took $67,000 from me, I said softly, and he also took 8 years of my life. Well, Rachel's voice turned as cold as ice. It is time for him to pay for all of it. Diana mentioned you would have a recording device on Saturday night, she continued, and that the Federal Bureau of Investigation will be there to take him into custody. That is the plan. Good. While you are sitting there with him, look him straight in the eye. Remember every woman he lied to and every promise he broke. You need to get that confession for us all. I will, I whispered back. I promise you. About an hour after that, I was on a video conference with Jessica Moore. Her face came into view on the screen. She had dark hair and intense eyes. I could see the inside of her small apartment in Phoenix in the background. She seemed younger than 36, but her eyes told a different story. Hello, Lillian. Thank you for making this happen. Of course, I replied, brushing a piece of hair from my face. I have waited 6 long years for someone to make this call. Diana explained your plan to me. Jessica just gave a slight nod. It all began for me in Phoenix in the year 2018. I was a director of marketing for a technology firm, and I met Graham at a party. He was so charming and ambitious. He was learned everything I thought I wanted. We were together for 7 months. He promised me we would get married, have children, and buy a home. Then he talked me into giving him money for his business plan. My $82,000 vanished, and so did he. I'm just so sorry. For so many years, I thought it was my fault, Jessica said, her voice full of old sadness. I had to go to therapy just to get by. I could not bring myself to trust any man. I could not even think about dating. I felt so stupid and defeated. You're not defeated, I told her. I can see that now, but it took a very long time. She stared directly into her camera. Lillian, on Saturday, if you feel afraid during that dinner, just remember that you are not only doing this for yourself, you are doing it for the next woman he would have hurt, she told me. I will remember that, I promised her, and I will be at his trial to testify, Jessica declared. Whatever it is you need, I am done being afraid. Claire Sullivan contacted me later that same afternoon. Her voice was the softest one of all, delicate and unsure. I never thought that anyone would ever listen to me, she said. I am listening to you. He told me he loved me. He promised that we would start a small consulting business together. I let him have $58,000. It was every penny I had, and then he was just gone. He gave all of us those same promises, I said. I really believe that I was the only one. Claire's voice started to shake. For 4 years, I believed I was his one and only mistake. You are not alone in this anymore, I told her gently, and neither am I. That night, Diana started a group chat she named the Survivors Circle. For 2 hours, we pieced together our pasts. The conversation quickly shifted from the shocking amount of money to the tiny, identical details. Graham's introduction was always the same. He chose the same expensive restaurants. He spoke the exact same lines to all of us. I have never met anyone like you. You are so different from other women. I can really see a future with you. He said these exact words to each woman, like an actor reading from a script. Rachel shared a picture of the engagement ring he gave her. Jessica showed us a text from him that said, I love you more than life itself. Claire sent a photo of a note he had written. You are my entire world. I looked at my phone as my hands began to tremble. These were not simple lies. This was a polished routine he performed, moving between cities and between women. I sent a message to the group. I will wear the wire to dinner tomorrow. I am going to get his confession on tape for all of us. Rachel replied, We are with you in spirit. Jessica wrote back, You can do this. And Claire sent, I can never thank you enough. On Friday, I went to the Federal Bureau of Investigation office for my final briefing. Agent Torres sat across a long conference table. Between us was a small box containing the necklace with the hidden microphone. Tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. at the Uchi restaurant in Austin. He slid a map with red circles on it toward me. We will have 2 agents at the bar and 2 more at a nearby table. Miss Cole is with me in the surveillance van just outside. We will have a live audio connection to you the entire time. I asked him, but what if he says nothing? Torres leaned back in his chair. He will definitely talk. Men like Graham have huge egos. When they believe they have committed a crime and gotten away with it, they love to brag, especially to a victim they think still loves them. Winning is not enough. They need you to know how clever they were. He picked up the necklace and gave it to me. The device turns on the moment you wear it. We will be listening to everything. The instant he confesses, our team will move in. You will be completely safe. I took the necklace, its cool metal pressing into my palm. Okay, get some sleep tonight, Torres advised. Tomorrow is a huge day. Later that evening, I sat on the couch beside Graham. He seemed perfectly relaxed, scrolling through basketball scores on his phone. Tomorrow evening, he said without looking up from his screen. Just the 2 of us. I am really looking forward to it. I forced myself to reply, Me too. He put his phone away, then put his arm around me and kissed my forehead. I love you, Lil. I closed my eyes tightly. I love you too. Every time I said that light, it became a little less difficult. Hours later, while he was fast asleep, I stood by the window staring down at the quiet, dark street. Tomorrow at Uchi, I would have dinner with the man I had loved for 8 years, and I would record him confessing his crimes. Tomorrow, I was the lure that would finally trap the monster. Tomorrow, Graham Hayes was going to tell me everything, and I would use his own words to ruin him. I was awake at 6 a.m. and saw that Graham was still asleep. His arm was thrown over his pillow. His expression was peaceful. I watched him for a second. This was the man I married, the man I gave all my trust to. And in just 13 hours, he would confess to things that would imprison him for life. He was completely unaware. I got out of bed and went to the window. The sky was changing to a soft gray with pale pink stripes. Somewhere in the city, federal agents were preparing. Diana was probably awake too, going over the plan again. In 13 hours, this nightmare would end. By 8 o'clock, Graham was up and acting like it was a normal Saturday. He brewed coffee, hummed with the music on the radio, and kissed my forehead while handing me a cup. Tonight will be absolutely perfect, he said with a big grin. I'm so excited. I made my voice sound happy and said, Me too. He glanced at his phone. I'm seeing my lawyer this afternoon about that minor issue with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I should be finished by 5 o'clock. I will see you at the restaurant around 7. Okay, sounds good. He gave me another kiss, took his keys, and went out the door. A deep quiet settled over the house. My hands trembled so badly that I had to put my coffee mug on the counter. At 10 a.m., I drove to the Federal Bureau of Investigation office. Torres, another agent named Lisa, and Diana were waiting for me in a conference room. Torres wanted to know how I was doing. I told him I was scared to death, but also prepared. Lisa presented a black case and revealed the necklace that held the recorder. She secured it around my neck for a final test, and the cold metal startled my skin. Then she gave me a small earpiece that blended with my skin tone. She explained it was my lifeline. If I felt I was in danger, I only needed to tap the necklace 2 times for them to rush in. I was unable to speak, so I just nodded. Diana stood up and gave me a long, firm hug. She whispered that I was the most courageous woman she had ever met and that she was with me. I whispered back that I knew, but at that second, I had never felt more alone. At midday, I went to Zilker Park and found a bench by the water. I watched families relaxing on blankets. Children were laughing and running, couples strolled by holding hands. It was a completely normal Saturday, full of the small pleasures I once took for granted. I pulled out my phone and opened a new note. I began writing a letter to myself that I would never be able to send. Dear Lillian, 8 years ago, you met a man who seemed perfect. You trusted him when he promised he loved you. You trusted him when he talked about starting a family. You trusted every word he said. You were not silly, you were not weak, you were simply human, and today you take your life back. The note was a clear reminder you are no longer a victim. You have more strength than you know. I put my phone away and silenced it. I watched the water until I felt my breathing even out. At 3 p.m., a text from Graham appeared. Lawyer meeting was a success. See you tonight. Love you. I saw the small red heart icon next to his words. He was so arrogant, so certain this was just another expensive dinner where I would swallow more of his lies. He was oblivious to what was coming. At 4 o'clock, I was getting my hair done at a salon on South Congress. The stylist was bubbly and kept the conversation going. While styling my hair, she asked if I was going to a special occasion. I said it was for an anniversary dinner. Oh, how wonderful. How many years? She asked. I answered, 8. Well, congratulations, she said, her smile warm in the reflection. You must be thrilled. I am, I told her. And I was telling the truth, just not in the way she imagined. At 5:30, I was home choosing my outfit. I selected the navy blue dress Graham purchased for me 2 years before. He always said I looked beautiful in it. I put on the dress, zipped it up, and faced the mirror. The tiny recording device was concealed right below my collar, hidden by a thin gold chain. You would never notice it unless you were looking for it. I gently touched the necklace. You can handle this. At 6 p.m., a text came from Diana. Everything is ready. Agents are at table 12 and the bar. I am in the van with Torres. Her message was reassuring, a sign that I was not by myself. I texted back, thank you for it all. She replied instantly, go get him. I read her words, picked up my purse, and left the house. By 6:45, I was in the car, my heart pounding. In under an hour, I would face my husband, Graham Hayes, and hear the truth. After that, federal agents would take him into custody, and my 8-year marriage would be over. A piece of me was excited for his downfall. I turned on the car, my hands were still, my breathing was even. I had practiced this scene 1,000 times, but driving into the city toward the man who had carefully destroyed me, I felt something change. The fear had vanished. I was prepared. The truth was finally going to be revealed. It was Saturday, September 28th, 2024. At 6:45 p.m., I was driving to downtown Austin. The steering wheel felt cool in my hands, which was odd against the warm evening air. As I drove on South Lamar Boulevard, the city lights twinkled in the purple and orange twilight. Nora Jones was on the radio singing Come Away With Me. That was once a favorite song of mine. Tonight, the words felt like a twisted prank. Come away with me. 8 years ago, I fell in love with Graham. I gave him my whole heart. We built a home together, and I imagined a future filled with our children. But tonight I was driving to meet him with a wire hidden on my body. The Federal Bureau of Investigation had taught me exactly what to say. I focused on my breathing, in for 4 counts, hold for 4, and out for 4. It was a coping trick from my therapist, Dr. Lawson. She warned me that my first instinct would be to run away, but I needed to stay calm, focused, and in charge. Right now, being in charge felt like a fantasy. At a red light on Barton Springs Road, I glanced at my reflection. The woman in the mirror looked calm. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless, and her blue dress was lovely. But her eyes told the real story. They were the eyes of a woman setting a trap for the man she loved. My phone vibrated with a message from Agent Torres at 7:02. It read, "Safe arrival. All agents are in place. The recorder is active. Stay calm. You can do this." My hands shook as I typed back, "On my way." At 7:05, I found a parking spot 2 blocks from our restaurant. I parked the car perfectly without even thinking. After I shut off the engine, I just sat in the silence, staring at the dashboard clock. The minutes crawled by. It was now 7:06. In just 24 minutes, I would be sitting across from my husband. The small device I was wearing would capture every word. I would ask him the questions the federal agents had practiced with me. What happened to the $67,500? Did you fake my signature on that legal form? Where did all the money from the investors go? I touched the locket on my neck. It appeared to be a simple silver chain, but it held a tiny, powerful microphone. Agent Torres had fastened it for me. He said he could pick up sounds from 15 feet away. He advised me to just be myself. Let Graham do the talking. The more relaxed he was, the more he would say. I shut my eyes and whispered, "I can handle this." I had to, for Diana, Rachel, Jessica, Claire, and every other woman he had betrayed. The silence was broken by my phone ringing. It was Diana. I took a breath and answered. "Hello," I said, trying to sound normal. "Hey." Diana's voice was gentle yet filled with concern. "Are you all right?" "No," I answered with total honesty, "but I made it here." "That is all that matters." I could hear the faint sounds of the street on her end. She was close by, a part of the support team. "Lillian, you need to hear me. You are not facing this by yourself. Torres is standing right beside me. I am here. We are all with you. When tonight is finished, we will see that he finally faces the consequences." My eyes started to burn with tears, but I forced them back. This was no time for crying. My makeup needed to stay perfect. I had to look like a happy wife celebrating her anniversary. "Thank you," I breathed, "for all of this." Diana gave a little chuckle. "Save your thanks. Wait until he's in handcuffs." I agreed with her. "Now go get the proof, architect." The small inside joke brought a smile to my face. I promised to call her when it was done. "You better," she replied, and then the line went dead. I took one last centering breath. Then I pushed my car door open and stepped into the warm Texas night. It was 7:20. I was standing in front of Uchi on South Lamar. The restaurant was a sleek glass building shining in the darkness. We had come here once before, 2 years ago, for our 6th anniversary. Graham had surprised me, and I had believed it was the most romantic night of my life. I knew the truth now. Each thoughtful act, each fancy present, and each time he said, "I love you," was just another part of his elaborate, carefully constructed lie. I started walking to the entrance, the soft clicks of my heels echoing on the sidewalk. I was surrounded by happy couples and friends just starting their night out. Somewhere in that crowd were federal agents protecting me. I had no idea who they were, and that was part of the strategy. Just knowing they were there gave me a small boost of courage. A hostess greeted me with a friendly smile. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" I replied. "Yes, for Hayes at 7:30. "Of course, Mrs. Hayes. Your husband has already arrived. Please come this way." I followed her through the stylish, softly lit restaurant. Graham was at a table in the corner. He rose as I walked toward him, looking as handsome as ever in a gray sports coat. He gave me that smile, the one that had won me over 8 years before. "Wow," he said, looking me up and down. "You look absolutely incredible." He moved in to kiss my cheek, and I fought the urge to recoil. The smell of his pricey cologne was suffocating. "Thank you," I said, sliding into my chair. "You look great too." He let out that confident, easy laugh I used to love. A waiter appeared instantly with menus and filled our water glasses. Graham ordered a bottle of our favorite sake. The good stuff, he said, giving me a quick wink. I hid my trembling hands by clasping them together in my lap. So, Graham started relaxing in his seat as if he did not have a worry in the world. He mentioned his lawyer had called earlier. He claimed the entire issue with the Federal Bureau of Investigation would be over within a week. He said it was a simple mix up with paperwork and I should not worry. I just nodded, keeping my expression blank. That sounds like wonderful news, he agreed. He took my hand and softly stroked my thumb. I know this has been stressful, Lil, but we will overcome it. We always have. I stared into his warm, deceptive eyes and felt the cold weight of the locket. The waiter brought our sake, poured it, and then departed. Graham held up his glass. I raised mine, my hand shaking slightly. To us, I said softly. We both drank. Graham was already looking at the menu, deciding what he would order. He was completely unaware of what was about to happen. I took a slow, deep breath and formed my first question in my mind. The trap was ready. The man before me was about to tell me everything. He was about to confess the truth about the money, the deception, and the 8 years he had stolen from me. And I was ready to listen to every single word. Our first dish came a few minutes after 7:30. It was a gorgeous plate of toro with yuzu and sea salt. The fish glistened in the low light of the restaurant. Graham took his chopsticks, looking completely at ease. This is incredible, he said after one bite. We need to do this more, just the two of us. No work, no worries, just us. The word us twisted in my stomach, but I forced a little smile. I would really like that. He then started telling a long story about his golf game from that morning. I smiled when I was supposed to, playing my role perfectly. Beneath the table, my fingernails pressed hard into my skin. The locket on my chest felt heavy, recording everything. Graham refilled our sake with a smooth, practiced motion. He had no idea federal agents were sitting at tables all around us, listening. By 7:50, he had talked his way through two more courses. I continued to smile and nod, my heart pounding against the hidden microphone. At last, I put my chopsticks down and placed my hands on my lap. I let a look of concern appear on my face. Graham, honey, I have something I need to ask you. He looked up, his smile still in place. Anything, my love. What is it? I began carefully. I have been feeling a little worried about our money. For just a moment, his smile wavered. Worried? Why? I looked down at the tablecloth. I saw the trust fund statement last week. My voice was quiet, like I was hesitant to ask. I saw some withdrawals that I did not recognize. He reached out and patted my hand. Oh, that was me, just shuffling funds for a new investment. You signed the power of attorney, remember? I handle all of that. I acted as if I was confused. But I only remember signing a limited power of attorney for the house refinance back in 2018. Graham's jaw clenched for an instant before he managed a laugh. Sweetheart, you must be misremembering. It was a general one. You signed it? I have the paperwork at my office. I tilted my head, keeping up the act. Are you positive? Because $67,500 is a huge sum of money, Graham. His grip on my hand became a little too tight. It is our money, Lillian. I am investing it for us. The waiter brought our next course, but neither of us paid attention to it. The clock on the far wall showed it was 8 o'clock. I could feel the necklace, the eyes of the agents, and the tension of 2 weeks of preparation. I took another slow, deep breath. Graham, I just need you to tell me the truth. He put his sake cup down with a soft click. I'm telling you the truth. The woman from the photos, Natasha, who is she? His expression went completely blank. For a second, his confident mask slipped, and his eyes became cold as ice. Then the fake smile came back. She's a work colleague. I have told you this, nothing more. What are you implying, Lillian? I know about the hotel rooms, the vacations, and the pictures. His smile disappeared for good. Who told you that? Does it matter who told me? He drained his sack in a single motion and poured another. By 8:15, the alcohol was loosening his tongue. Fine, we had an affair. It did not mean anything. Real tears started to well in my eyes. You cheated on me. Do not play the victim, he sneered. You want the truth? Natasha is brighter than you. She gets business. She knows how to win. And you, he laughed cruelly, you are just an architect who designs little houses and dreams of having babies. I recoiled, the hurt on my face feeling painfully real. Then what am I to you? My voice was a faint whisper. He settled back into his chair, his gaze completely empty of warmth. You were simple, Lillian. You were lonely, you needed affection, and you had access to money. So you just played me. I played your trust fund. Yes, Hayes Capital was failing. Our original investors were leaving. I had to find a way to pay them off. Using my money. Using the funds from your grandmother's trust. And I was planning to take all the rest of it. A cruel, victorious smile spread across his face. Natasha already had the papers drawn up. Another $783,000 was set to vanish. My voice was barely audible. When did you decide to do this to me? He laughed, a sharp and chilling sound. From the moment we met, Lillian. Did you honestly believe I was in love with you? You were a target, a name on a list. That is all you have ever been to me. His words filled the room like a toxic fog. Then everything happened with professional precision. At 8:45, Special Agent Vincent Torres came to our table with two other agents. Across the restaurant, other patrons got up, showing their badges. It was a perfectly planned FBI operation. Graham Michael Hayes, Torres said in a calm, firm voice. You are under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, forgery, and identity theft. All the color vanished from Graham's face. What? An agent moved in with handcuffs as Torres gave a slight nod. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be held against you in a court of law. Lillian, Graham pleaded, his voice cracking. What is happening here? I stood up, my legs shaking, and reached for the silver necklace around my neck. It is all recorded, Graham, I said softly. Every single word you just said. His face contorted with fury. You liar! You arranged this whole thing. Torres moved to stand between us. Mr. Hayes, do not speak to the witness. Witness! Graham shouted. She is my wife. Not for very much longer, I murmured in return. The agents hoisted him to his feet and secured his hands. Other diners were now staring, some recording on their phones, others murmuring in disbelief. The quiet, sophisticated mood of Uchi was destroyed by the harsh truth of the law. As they walked him out, Graham glanced back at me. His charming smile was gone. The warmth, the kindness, the entire person I thought I loved for 8 years was just an illusion. Now I only saw a stranger. By 8:50, I was out on the street where Diana was already waiting. Her face was a storm of different emotions. The instant she saw me, she pulled me into a fierce hug. I finally let myself collapse in her arms, releasing the sobs I held back for 2 weeks and for 8 long years. I did it, I wept. I actually did it. Yes, you did, Diana said, her voice filled with pride as she comforted me. It is over, Lillian. It is really over. But as the FBI vehicle drove off into the warm September evening, its lights flashing against the Austin skyline, I understood the reality. The illusion was shattered, and I had only ever been in love with the illusion. The federal courthouse in downtown Austin seemed like a cold fortress of glass and steel when I got there on a cloudy October morning. Assistant United States Attorney Daniel Ross met me inside a conference room on the third floor. He laid out all the evidence on the table as if he were a general preparing for war. He had the recording from Uchi, bank records for the stolen $67,500, the fake power of attorney with my signature copied from a 2018 charity form, and inner-time emails between Graham and Natasha about the plan to steal another $783,000. This is one of the strongest cases I have ever handled, Ross stated. He was in his early 40s, with graying hair and the steady confidence of someone who did not lose often. Your recording is a powerful piece of evidence, but with the documents, Natasha's help, and stories from other victims, we will lock him up for a very long time. I could only nod, my hands held tightly together on my lap. One part of me wanted to feel victorious. Another part just felt empty. In the middle of October, Graham's high priced lawyer, Marcus Webb, argued to have the Uchi recording dismissed, saying I had invaded Graham's privacy. Judge Maria Delgado, a formidable judge with 30 years of experience, rejected his request in under 10 minutes. Mrs. Hayes was the victim of an ongoing fraud, she declared. Under Texas law, she had every right to record that conversation. The motion is denied. The day Natasha Mercer accepted her plea bargain, I saw her through the courtroom window. She stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit, admitting her role in conspiracy and securities fraud. She agreed to a sentence of 8 years in prison for her testimony against Graham. As the guards led her out, our eyes met for a brief moment. She did not look remorseful, only defeated. The trial started on November 18th. The courtroom was completely full. Reporters crowded the press area, and the families of his other victims filled the benches. FBI agents sat silently near the back. Graham was at the defense table in a well tailored navy suit. His face was a blank slate, showing no emotion, like he was watching a movie about someone else. The entire room went quiet when I went to the witness stand. Ross gently walked me through my testimony. I told the jury about the secret vasectomy, the 8 years of lies, and my deep desire to be a mother. I told them about the $67,500 he stole from my grandmother, the forged paper, and his affair. My voice did not waver when I told them Graham had called me a target, just one more number on his list. His lawyer, Marcus Webb, was merciless during the cross-examination. He attempted to paint me as a vengeful wife seeking payback. He said my tears were a performance to trap Graham into a confession. But then Ross played the recording for the jury. They listened to Graham's cold voice confessing, "You were simple, you had money, you were a target." A profound silence settled over the entire room. I noticed two jurors wiping tears from their eyes. 2 days after that, Natasha took the stand. She described the whole operation in great detail. 43 investors, $4.7 million, stolen through fake financial statements and non existent property deals. Money from new investors was used to pay off the old ones. She confessed to forging documents, creating shell companies, and plotting to steal the last $783,000 from my family's trust. "We plan to take everything," she said, her voice flat. Graham told me she would not even know it was gone until we had disappeared. Webb tried to call her a liar, but bank statements and email records proved that every word she spoke was the truth. On November 22nd, the other victims started to tell their stories. The first was Rachel Torres, a doctor from Houston who lost $115,000. "He took more than my savings," she stated, her voice trembling. "He took my trust in people, my ability to love, and the hope that someone could want me for me, not for my money." Jessica Moore from Phoenix, who lost $82,000, talked about how she had tried to take her own life after learning of Graham's betrayal. A retired teacher wept on the stand, explaining how his entire $200,000 retirement fund was gone. He could never retire. "When it was my time, I stood and looked straight at Graham. I told the court, he did not only steal money, he stole 8 years of my life. He stole my dream of having a family, he stole my sense of security, but he did not steal my voice. And I am using my voice today." It took the jury just 4 hours to make a decision. On November 25th, the foreman read the verdict on all 22 counts: wire fraud, securities fraud, conspiracy, forgery, and identity theft. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Graham's face showed no expression, but I saw his knuckles turn white as he held onto the table. His sentencing took place on December 6th. Judge Delgado stared down at Graham with absolute contempt. "Mr. Hayes, you are a predator. You sought out vulnerable women and destroyed families. This court finds your actions disgusting." He received a sentence of 35 years in federal prison, without any chance of parole for at least 30 years. The judge also mandated that he repay $5.1 million. Graham stood like a statue, revealing nothing. He was led away in handcuffs and did not even look back. Outside, the five of us, me, Diana, Rachel, Jessica, and Claire, stood as one while cameras flashed and journalists shouted questions. I stepped up to the microphone. Graham Hayes took our money, I stated, but the greater theft was our peace of mind and our ability to trust. We are taking that back, beginning right now. We are not his victims, we are survivors. Within an hour, the video of my speech was all over the internet. That evening, at my home in Zilker, a letter was in my mailbox. It was sent from the Travis County Jail. I recognized Graham's handwriting on the envelope. Inside, there was a single piece of paper. It was an official form requesting that I visit him one last time before his transfer. I looked at the visitor form for a very long time. Then, I put a check in the box that said agree. The divorce was finalized on December 15th. It happened in a small windowless office that smelled like old paper and stale coffee. Texas law has a 60-day waiting period, which started when I first filed in late September. The judge granted my divorce immediately. She ruled it was a fault-based divorce, since Graham's crimes were more than enough evidence. The house became mine. The money he stole was ordered returned, and I would get a share of the restitution. The money would come from the Federal Bureau of Investigation selling off everything Graham owned. I turned down alimony because I wanted nothing more from him. By then, agents had found his secret bank accounts in the Cayman Islands, holding $1.8 million. They also seized his cars, his city condominium, and everything from Hayes Capital. My $67,500 was back in my account in a few weeks. Deanna, Jessica, Rachel, and Claire, the other women he fooled, also got most of their money back. The group of 43 investors, tricked by Graham's plans, also filed a lawsuit. Their attorneys believed they might recover 40 to 50 cents for every dollar they had lost. It was not perfect, but it was a fresh start. I put the Zilker house on the market the week before Christmas. I walked through its empty rooms for the last time. I saw the kitchen where Graham cooked for me while telling me his lies. I saw the bedroom where I slept next to a man I did not even know. I saw the backyard where I had pictured my future children playing. All I felt was the cold, hard truth. That house was no longer filled with happy times, just the shadows of a life that was a complete lie. It sold in just 3 days. A young couple with a newborn offered more than I was asking, and I signed the papers right away. In early January, I moved to a new loft in East Austin. The apartment had exposed brick walls, steel beams, and giant windows that let in lots of winter sun. It was only 10 minutes from Diana's apartment and 15 from my architecture office. She visited one Saturday to help me get settled. We sat on the floor, drank some wine, and I told her I was prepared for a new beginning. She raised her glass and said, "You are already having one." Going back to work felt like I could finally take a deep breath. My coworkers gave me a warm welcome, and I poured my energy into a new charity project. I designed a housing center for women escaping domestic violence. The plans had secure entrances, quiet gardens, and private apartments that felt like real homes, not temporary housing. My design won an award from a local architecture group in late December. When I went on stage to receive it, I dedicated it to every woman who had to start her life over from scratch. The applause that filled the room felt like a real win. On a cool Saturday in the middle of December, I invited the four women to my new loft for dinner. Diana, Jessica, Rachel, and Claire all came. We all gathered in my living room, which was mostly empty. We ate Thai food out of takeout boxes on the floor, and we shared our real stories. We did not share the clean versions for the court, but the messy, painful truth. Jessica admitted she spent an entire year in therapy after she tried to end her own life. Rachel confessed she still gets nervous when a man gives her a compliment. Claire cried as she said her own mother blamed her for being tricked. Diana lifted her glass of cheap wine. "We survived this," she declared. "That makes us much stronger than he ever was." That night, we decided to create a formal support group. It began as a simple group text message. We named it the Survivors Trust. It became a nonprofit organization to help women hurt by romance schemes and financial lies. Lily, Indiana, and Jessica were co founders, and Rachel and Claire served on our advisory board. Our goal was very clear. We wanted to offer free financial investigation services, legal assistance, and emotional support to women who were financially taken advantage of by their partners. We formed a partnership with the National Network to End Domestic Violence. We received a small grant from a local foundation and created a website in early January. In only 3 months, we assisted 17 women in Texas get back over $400,000 in stolen money. We taught them how to go to the police, freeze their bank accounts, collect proof, and hire lawyers who knew their situation. National Public Radio did a feature story about us. Cable News Network even came to our small office in East Austin to interview the five of us. On television, we told everyone that romance fraud is a hidden crisis that affects so many people. After that, local news channels also told our story. Donations began to pour in. But even with a new place, a new mission, and a new sense of meaning, I still felt the heavy weight of what I had lost. It was more than the cash or the 8 years he had stolen. It was about the future I had imagined, the children I would never have, the family pictures that would never be on a wall, the part of me that used to think love could be genuine, safe, and forever. I continued to see my therapist, Dr. Lawson, twice a month. During a meeting in late December, I finally had a breakdown. I cried that I was not just grieving for Graham, but for the future he stole from me. Dr. Lawson handed me a tissue and gently said, "You are not mourning him. You are grieving for the trusting person you once were, and that is okay. She deserved so much better. Now you are helping other women avoid her same fate." Those words stayed with me. On New Year's Eve, I was by myself in my apartment. I could hear fireworks and happy shouts from downtown. A text from Diana lit up my phone. "You made it through the hardest year. The next one will be wonderful." I texted back, "I know it will be," and I truly believed it. To be completely free, there was one last thing I needed to do. On January 15th, I drove east from Austin on Highway 95. The road ran through flat farmland and thorny mesquite trees. I was heading to the cold gray walls of the Bastrop prison. Graham was there, serving a 35-year sentence. My visitor permit was in the glove box. I was not going for closure or to forgive him. I went to prove to him that he had not destroyed me. I needed him to see the strong woman I had become. A woman who started a nonprofit, won an award, and helped 17 other women. After that, I would walk away and never think of him again. I parked my car, went through security, and entered the visiting hall. He sat there behind the glass in an orange jumpsuit. I could hardly recognize his face. It was a cold January morning as I drove east out of Austin alone. A pale blue sky was above the Texas farms. My friend Diana had sent 3 texts saying she would go with me. She did not want me to do this by myself, but this was something I had to do alone. This was not about forgiveness, but about proving he did not break me. The drive was 40 minutes. My hands were perfectly still as I drove up to the prison. Concrete buildings stood behind fences with razor wire on top. The entire place was just as depressing as I had imagined. It felt like a place where hope came to die. At the entrance, I showed my license and my approval letter. An officer checked my details and walked me through a metal detector. Another guard checked my purse for a phone or any cash. I only had my keys and my determination. The visiting hall was a long room with white walls and harsh, bright lights. A thick sheet of plexiglass divided the room down the middle. Telephones were placed on each side of the partition. Families sat at small tables. Wives spoke to their husbands as kids put their hands on the glass. Everyone spoke in low voices, trying to hide their feelings. I took a seat at table 7 and waited for him. A door creaked open and Graham walked in. He looked much older and a lot thinner. His expensive suits and confident smile were gone. He wore a tan jumpsuit and had a blank expression. Our eyes met through the glass, and for a second we both froze. He lifted his phone and I lifted mine. The silence was so heavy it was hard to breathe. His voice, empty and cold, spoke through the line. Why did you come here? I looked right at him and felt nothing. The anger, the sadness, the love were all gone. He was just a stranger. I said, I came to see you for who you really are. Not the man I made up in my head, but the man you were all along. He simply shrugged his shoulders. What is it you want from me, Lillian? Because I will not say I am sorry. I answered, I am not here for an apology. Then what are you doing here? He asked as he leaned back in his seat. Did you come just to tell me that you won? I responded, I came here to show you that you are the one who lost. His jaw clenched. You failed, I told him. For 8 years, you tried to break me. You wanted me to feel small and easy to control, and you failed. He let out a short, bitter laugh. I succeeded perfectly, Lillian. I got just what I wanted. I got your cash and 8 years of your life. That seems like a win to me. I moved closer to the glass. You had my money for a short time, but I got all of it back. I'm creating a new life with the years I have left. You could not destroy my spirit. He smirked and said, and now you see yourself as a hero? Helping a few women with a small nonprofit is not a big deal. No, I said softly, it is my freedom. His face grew dark. You were always so gullible, Lillian, and weak. You saw only what you wanted to see because you were lonely. That is your fault, not mine, I said. Maybe I was too willing to trust, but I would rather be too trusting than be a person who feels absolutely nothing. He shot back. Feelings are a weakness. They make people simple to control. That is how I knew you would be simple. And that is why you will spend the rest of your life in a cell, I said calmly. You think you are so clever, but you are completely empty on the inside. There is no love or regret in you, not even a bit of sympathy. You are an empty shell. For the very first time, I could see pure rage in his eyes. He hissed, You think you are better than me. You are wrong. Your only trick was not getting caught. I told him, No, Graham, I am the one who escaped. He slammed his fist on the glass, startling the other visitors. You will never be free of me, Lillian. I will be in your thoughts always. I stood up, the phone still in my hand. I agreed. You are right, I will not forget you, but you will be a warning, not a memory, a lesson in what I will never allow in my life. Every woman I help escape a man like you will make me think of you. His face twisted into an angry mask. Without me, you are nobody. I answered. I was always a whole person, Graham. You simply refused to see me. I placed the receiver down. His shouts were a muffled noise. His face was red as he pounded on the barrier. Without looking back, I began to walk away from him. Lillian! His voice was faint, but I heard him clearly. You did love me. You know it is true. At the door, I paused for a final glance. He was pressed against the glass, his expression pleading. I picked up the phone one last time. No, I said softly. I loved the man you faked being. The real you was a stranger to me. Then I hung it up and walked out, never looking back. The winter sun was cold but bright on my skin. Inside my car, I paused and breathed in slowly and deeply. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Diana asking if I was okay. A smile touched my lips as I replied with one word, free. I turned on the car and drove from the prison, watching it vanish in my mirror. Graham Hayes was only one part of my life story. It was my turn to write the ending. The aroma of roasted turkey filled my apartment when my first guest arrived for our Thanksgiving meal at 6. Diana was first, holding 2 wine bottles and smiling widely. You actually made a full dinner, she noted, gazing at the table set with candles. I laughed and said, Please try to hide your shock. By 6:30, my home was crowded with friends. Jessica arrived from Los Angeles with a pumpkin pie in hand. My little brother Marcus came with his fiancée, Emma. Sarah Bennett, my lawyer from the trial, brought her amazing macaroni and cheese. Ben Carter, an attorney I had met in June, appeared with flowers and a friendly smile. Aaron Sullivan was present too, the man Diana was once going to marry. 8 years ago, Graham had ruined their plans for a life together. They found each other again 6 months back, and he was with her tonight. When she looked his way, I saw a piece in her eyes that had been missing for years. As the sun went down, we all sat together at the table. Beyond the window, the lights of East Austin started to shine. My turkey came out a bit dry, and the potatoes had some lumps. But none of those small things were important. What was important was the happy laughter and the warmth of our connection. In the middle of dinner, I stood up and raised my glass. Everyone became quiet. 1 year ago, I doubted I would survive, I started to say. I truly believed my life had come to an end. I glanced at the faces of the people who had saved me. But I survived. My life was not over, it was simply the start of a new part. Graham stole a great deal from me. He took 8 years of my life, $67,500, and my hope for a family. But this was something he could not take. I motioned toward my friends sitting around me. He failed to break this group we formed, these friendships, or who I have become. So thank you to every one of you for supporting me, for trusting me, and for teaching me that family is not about biology. Family is the people who are there for you when your world falls apart. Diana brushed away a tear. My hand was squeezed by Jessica. Ben looked at me with quiet pride. Diana lifted her glass and said, "To surviving." "To new beginnings," Aaron said. Marcus concluded, "To family." We all took a sip, and the room buzzed with a happy sound, the kind that comes after overcoming a terrible ordeal. After the meal, Diana and I took our wine up to the rooftop. I had put up small lights on the railing, which gave off a gentle light on the cool November night. The lights of Austin sparkled under the dark Texas sky. "Remember that letter you received last month?" Diana asked, as she leaned on the railing. I nodded. "The one from the publisher. They want to print my book." "That is incredible news, Lil." I said, "The best part is sharing my experience in my own words. I am a survivor, not a victim." She asked, "What is the title?" "It's called Trust and Theft: How I Beat Financial Abuse and Took Back My Power." "That title is perfect," she told me. We were quiet for a moment, just watching the city lights shine below us. "Just this year, we have helped 47 women," Diana said quietly. "And the Survivors Fund has recovered $1.2 million, I added. "Lillian, you are making a real difference in people's lives." "We are doing it as a team," I corrected. "None of this could happen without you, Jessica, Rachel, Claire, or any woman brave enough to share her own story." Diana looked right at me. "Do you have any regrets about pursuing him so hard?" I remember the fear, the nights without sleep, and the dinner at Uchi with a hidden microphone. I recalled the court case and the visit to the prison where I felt no fear. "No," I answered, "not for a single second." "Good," Diana said, and our glasses touched. "You are a true force of nature." I laughed a little. "I'm just trying my hardest." I could hear Ben's happy laughter coming from the apartment below. After meeting him at a charity event in June, the idea of dating scared me. But Ben was so patient and very kind. He gave me the kind of respect I was just learning to accept. We moved at a very slow pace, first with coffee, then walks and late talks. He knew everything about my past, but did not try to change me. He just supported me, always letting me heal in my own time. I was not yet in love, but it felt like a possibility, like the first warm day after a hard winter. Diana squeezed my shoulder to show her support. "I should go back downstairs. Aaron is probably boring Marcus with talk about cryptocurrency." I smiled and said, "Go save my brother." She went down, and I was by myself on the roof. The chilly November air was pleasant on my skin under the twinkling lights. My thoughts turned to Graham, serving his 35-year sentence in a prison 500 miles from here. These days, he hardly ever crosses my mind. I feel no anger or sadness, not even victory. He simply does not occupy my thoughts anymore. But tonight, beneath the big Texas sky, with the love of my family below, I felt something unexpected. I felt a sense of gratitude. Not gratitude for him, but for what his actions taught me about me. I discovered that I was much stronger than I ever knew. I was able to get through the most terrible experiences. I could create a new life, one that was even better than the one I lost. I shut my eyes, took a deep breath, and said quietly into the night, "I am free." And it was completely true. A betrayal like that can break a person, or it can make them much stronger. I realized that the decision was always up to me. Looking back, I see a version of myself who trusted and loved too easily. The deepest betrayals rarely come from people you consider enemies. Often, it is the one sleeping next to you, the one who made promises about tomorrow. The hurt Graham inflicted was far worse than any stranger could. It was so painful because I had included him in all of my future dreams. His lies were much more than just untruths. They were an assault on every hope that I held. He exploited weaknesses I was not even aware of. He threw away 8 years of my life for his sick game with women who trusted him. I hope I can share some lessons I learned through my pain. Please do not make the same mistakes I did. Pay attention to warning signs, like secrets about money, being cut off from friends, or inconsistent stories. You do not need absolute proof to doubt a situation that feels wrong. And never give up your freedom for something that is not a true partnership. I now live my life by these new rules. First, honest money conversations are not unromantic, they are necessary. Second, real trust is built on actions over time, not just nice words. Third, it is good to have an open heart, but you must also be careful to protect yourself. And fourth, it is completely possible to recover from disaster and become stronger than ever. I do not think God caused my suffering, but I know He was with me during it. At my lowest points, when I wanted to give up, I discovered a strength I did not know I had. I feel that this inner power is a gift from above. If my experience helps just one woman avoid signing a document she does not understand, or ignoring her gut feeling, or getting caught in a lie, then my 8 years of suffering were worth it. You can never be blamed for the lies someone else tells you, but you are in charge of how you move on from them. Make the choice to survive. Make the choice to rebuild your life. And make the choice to be free. I truly appreciate you listening to my story all the way through. I am really curious to hear what you think. What would you have done in my situation if you discovered your partner was taking your money and planning a massive lie? I would love to read your thoughts in the comments section. If you found this story meaningful, please think about subscribing to my channel for more content. I also want to mention that this story is inspired by true events of financial deception, but I have altered some details for storytelling. If this subject is upsetting for you, please remember that there are many other stories on this channel that you may prefer.